Good morning. This is Bill from Curious Cars on a decent November Naples, Florida morning. Finally. We've got weather in the 50s. I've actually got a light jacket on, some kind of a fleece thing, whatever. I'd forgotten what it was like. I'm still in shorts because, it's not that cold and it's not going to be cold later. But at least it's a decent, proper morning where my glasses aren't fogging up and I'm not friggin' miserable from the heat and the swampy atmosphere that we live with most of the time around here. And yeah, I know I complain about where I live, and I am moving finally, at least for the summers, and you don't always have immediate control over where you end up. Let me just say that. Sometimes shit just there's a cat. Peter's cats are weird and angry, and I don't know if they're well fed because they look at me with this lean and hungry look. But anyway, we'll keep an eye on him and keep going. But anyway, look, so I complain about the weather a lot, but that's because the weather really sucks a lot. And, unfortunately, my life kind of got laid out down here, so I'm stuck with it and look, I love Florida otherwise. I mean, a great place to be in a variety of ways. And, in the season, in the winter time, it's actually quite paradisical. I love it very much, but when it's hot and humid and swampy, it's the worst there is. Anyway, look, what I've got today is a 1987 Cadillac Coupe Deville Springtime Edition. It always makes me think of Mel Brooks with Springtime for Hitler, but, I guess, what are you going to do? Before I get into the car, though, let me give you a quick update on some people. First of all, Chris. I talk about Chris all the time, worst human on earth. One of the reasons I talk about him all the time is because I'm fascinated that I'm friends with this horrible, despicable human being who just eternally proves how rotten and horrible. The other day he walks in my shop, right, where he comes all the time to hang out and drink my Coca-Colas. I always go to have one out of the fridge. Well, they're gone, and that's because Chris takes them. And he tries to hide it. He does a fake sneeze when he opens the pop top to sort of hide the sound of it. And anyway, he comes walking in with a big bag of Chick-fil-A. It's about 11:30, and I'm like, wow, this is great. Chris has finally, done something that makes me, what did you get me? A spicy, no, yeah, sorry, this was just for me. Got it after my massage. Just for him. I completely flipped out. He then offered me charity nuggets because he's a glutton. So of course he way over ordered, and he, you know, okay, I'll spare you a few. Well, you can take your charity nuggets and shove them, you know where, Chris. Take them and throw them out for all I care. You know, I didn't take any of them, and it just constantly reaffirms the horrors of the people around me and how cheap everybody I know is. All of my friends are intensely cheap. I don't care which one it is. Penelope, cheap. Robert the Polak, cheap. Al, especially. Al is very cheap. Toothless Dave, one of the cheapest people I know. Ulf the German. All of them, cheap people, and I'm surrounded by them. You know, in some ways I'm glad my mother passed, because if she knew the company I was keeping, she would just be, I hope there's no afterlife where she's looking down in horror and seeing just what's become of her son. But anyway, look, it doesn't matter. We got decent weather forecast for the next 10 days. I'm not going to be fooled. You know, I'm really not. I have this feeling that it's going to be hot with record highs again before we even know it. So, I tell you, I hear the door. Hold on one second. Let me get right back to it. All right, well, that was handled. Before I get into the car real quick, let me make another little push for you know, anyone who likes these videos, and God knows I appreciate that, and I don't understand it, and God bless you, but if you like these things, you need to get over onto X, you know, formerly Twitter. I've been posted over there for a while. I do actually sneak previews of the videos. They go up a few hours before they hit YouTube, and you know, sometimes the day before, right, maybe, because I like it over there. You know, it's fun. It's nice to interact. I put up photos of shit I see while I'm driving around, stuff that annoys me, you know, stuff I repost, whatever. So if you have any interest in this channel, you got to go over and sign up for X. It's actually a fun place now. And, you know, follow Curious Cars. I'll put a link to that in the description below. But let's dive right into this thing. And yes, there are some European cars on the way. I've been getting flack for some people who subscribe because they like the European stuff. And, you know, God knows they're getting a healthy dose of chrome and padded vinyl roofs. But I've got some Euro stuff on the way, and we'll have, you know, look, I do what shows up and I do what appeals to me. I just can't help it. It's just the way that I do it. So anyway, look, it's a 1987 Cadillac Coupe Deville. Springtime edition, and we'll get into what makes it a springtime edition. And I had to find, you know, when I bought it, I had no idea. I found out about that later, but it is pretty cool. Mostly, I think special editions in cars are kind of stupid, but, you know, in this one, they did put a little thought into it, although I have no idea what the hell it has to do with spring. But anyway, it's a 5th generation DeVille, a nameplate that can trace its roots back to a car shown at the 1949 Motorama, which was, of course, a big yearly car show that, you know, introduced people to what was coming up. It was very posh. It was, you know, a lot of extra chrome inside and out on an era that already had a lot of chrome, so they did that. It had power windows. It had a little stenographer's pad in the back where you could jot notes down in the center armrest, and even a telephone in the glove box. So presumably it was set up for the CEO type, which held true because Charles Wilson, president of GM, took that show car and drove it for a few years as his personal car before he presented it to his secretary. I wonder what his wife thought of that. What did that secretary do to earn a Cadillac show car that had been driven by the chief exec? But yeah, anyway, that's just the stuff of speculation. But the DeVille would later, it would become, in 49, it became an upmarket trim level on the Series 62, much like the Fifth Avenue badge on Chrysler. So you had a Series 62 DeVille, and then a few years later, in fact 10 years later, it became a standalone model in the seminal year of 1959 with those quintessential tail fins, you know, the stuff of the Hard Rock Cafe and movies and photos and art stuff everywhere. So, and then it would run all the way through 8 generations of Deville, 8 generations, and sedan and coupe form and convertibles and that sort of thing. Before Cadillac unceremoniously dumped the name in 2005 in favor of DTS, which I presume stood for Deville Touring Sedan, but now it would just be DTS. Which, could easily be the name of like a violent psychiatric condition or some kind of disconcerting venereal disease. I find myself really, really hateful of what, look, GM, bring back the name Deville and Eldorado, please. And while you're at it, bring back El Camino. This is stuff that was all distinctly American and wonderful, and nobody wants a pseudo Euro name badge on the back of their American car, in my opinion anyway. But what are you gonna do anyway? So this is a 5th gen, which, putting Cimarrons aside for a moment, was kind of the first in-your-face downsize that Cadillac offered on an already existing platform. Yes, the previous Deville was considered a downsize from, the cruise ships and super tankers of the past, but it was still a pretty big car, and it was rear-wheel drive. They did come out with the Seville, which was Nova-based, actually like Firebird-based underneath, and yeah, that was a small car, but there was no Seville name badge before that, and it was also a pretty handsome car for the time, and, got driven by the hipsters, so, this was the first one where a traditional Cadillac buyer might have walked in the showroom and gone, what is this? It just looks a bit too much like a Chevy Celebrity or Oldsmobile 98 to make that traditional car buyer happy. I mean, at least it came with a V8, which, probably the only feature that saved its sales figures, but the yuppies would sooner touch molten lava than something that wasn't European. Traditional car buyers want rear-wheel drive, big cars. Who is Cadillac trying to appeal to? Maybe the automotive press, but certainly not any of their buyers. And, its mere existence was apparently enough to drive a fair few buyers to Lincoln, because why they wouldn't have just bought the larger Brougham that Cadillac was still offering, that was still a big car, the old Deville rear-wheel drive V8. Apparently just the existence of this car pissed off enough Cadillac guys that they ran over to Lincoln. And Lincoln was running ads showing, these Devilles in a valet parking lot with Oldsmobile 98s and Chevys and other stuff, and none of the valets knew which car was which because they all just looked too much like. It was a very clever ad. But in fairness, these cars were just an affront to anyone of an age who had grown up with Cadillacs being two very distinctive things. Two very specific things, and that was huge and distinctive. That's what Cadillacs were known for. And quite frankly, all of a sudden they didn't seem so big, and they certainly didn't seem so distinctive, and I think that just pissed a lot of people off. All that said, I think this springtime edition is pretty distinctive. I mean, the package added that white cabriolet roof, which, done by ASC, and it's a bit of a work of art. It has two-tone leather seats inside. It's got stainless trim on the bottom. It's got chrome everywhere, and gold badging. I'm not lying when I say I find it to be a bit of a freak show, and also very attractive and appealing. I mean, I'm probably just a product of my age, but I can kind of appreciate that they took a European sedan concept, which is what this is, and made it a way over-the-top American Bling Brougham. I mean, that's a phrase. They're affronting everyone. They're affronting the traditional car buyer in America, and they're affronting the guys who want a European car. I just don't see where this thing makes anyone happy but a weirdo like me. I mean, it just looks like the bathrooms at Versailles right out of the factory. I mean, it is just so over the top. Again, the roof is just a work of art in form and materials. You see, it's got the like bars on a convertible top. It's got that worked into it from ASC. Reminds me of the saying, if you think it's ugly now, wait till you see it with the top down. But it is actually quite attractive. The formal roof line I like. That was one of the key features of these cars that might have helped their design. The Euro-style composite headlamps are a bit of an enigma to me. I mean, you take this car and you put Euro lights on it. What were considered Euro lights at the time? I mean, we didn't have these in the 80s. The prior 3 model years of this car had 4 square headlights, which looked appropriate. All of a sudden, they stick these Euro things in there. I mean, what do they think? Someone's not going to buy a BMW because they put Euro headlights in this car? I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The wire wheel covers, white walls, they look proper. Love that it has the light indicators on the fenders. See the big cornering lights there. Again, that stainless rocker trim looks pretty nice. Impact strip down the side. Silly gold wreath around the key with, the car had gold badging as part of the special edition. I'll give it the same critique I gave that Fifth Avenue last week with a mix match of, different trims. Chrome mirrors. Huge blind spot there in the back, but it's fine. I like the limousine-style padded rear window, sort of sharp-edged taillights that are, they're pretty distinctive. I'll give it that, although they're tiny. Big chrome bumper integrated in there. All in all, to me, it's handsome. To a lot of people, it's just absolutely ridiculous. So let's have a look inside the trunk, and then we'll get into the rest of it. See if I find the keys here. No keyless entry on this year. That'd be a nice thing to add. Gotta flip this back up. That's very traditional Cadillac. There we have a nice big trunk, and part of that is because there's not really anything going on back here, being a front-wheel drive car, but you've got a nice big Cadillac bat with the wreaths and crests. Your little tool kit over there. Presume the spare tire's up under this thing. It is somewhere. And, it's decent size, which it better be. I mean, obviously it's smaller than most Cadillac trunks, that had come before it. But you could still fit some crap in there. Golf clubs, suitcases, that sort of thing. But, man, you better be able to. I mean, remember, the people who bought these things are used to cars the size of aircraft carriers, and here Cadillac is trying to foist these things on them. In later years, this same Deville, because of complaints and critiques, they lengthened it. They lengthened the hell out of it. The same car, just put longer fenders in the front and back, bigger overhangs, if you can believe that. But I will say that I do think that looked handsome, and I do think it improved the car, and it certainly did improve the moods of some Cadillac buyers. A few of them came back to that one. Have a look under the hood. So this is the one redeeming quality of this car, is that it's V8 powered. And I mean, quite honestly, that's all you can say at a minimum, is that it's V8 powered. It was the first front-wheel drive of the Deville series, first with the V8 put in sideways. HT 4100, that stands for high technology, God help us. 4100 being, cubic inches, or not, 4,100 cubic inches. 40, it stands for 4.1 liter cc's. Very weird engine, and not beloved by anyone. It did develop well as time went on. It became the 4.5 and the 4.9, and they were pretty good engines. In the 4100 form, you're looking at an iron head on an aluminum block, which is a strange approach, and went about as well as you'd expect. They have to be lovingly looked after, or they just get miserable. They also had these, by the way, in the big cars, in the big heavy cars, and thing struggles to put out 135 horsepower. But, it was a product of the times. You see those shock towers there, has wishbones up front. And here, I'll give it credit for this. Rack and pinion steering up front, wishbones up front, and wishbones in the back. So a true four-wheel independent suspension in this car, presumably meant to appeal to the European car buyer. And instead, they just set the suspension to full Cool Whip. So it really impressed nobody, except giving a Chevy Celebrity a pretty cushy ride. But, anyway, it looks nice under here. I'll give it that, very complete and together. This is a pretty well-kept car, but just not a beloved series from Cadillac at all. And the 4.5 and the 4.9 were definitely better engines. But, you know, through a 4-speed transmission, and it did what it had to do. And probably a bulk of the sales were to rental car agencies who, you know, sold these things or rented them as full-sized for big money before the German tourists in Miami were attacked by the locals. You see it's got VIN stickers on it. That's sort of a Mercedes thing, you know, anti-theft thing. But it's nice for collectors because they can see, you know, this fender's original, that fender's original, this hood is original. You know, that tells you it never hit a truck or was, you know, ran into a tree at top speed. You got a little bit of an egg crate grill there, grill, some tiny bumperettes, some Cadillac script written. You know, all in all, it's pretty handsome under the hood, if not the most beloved drivetrain Cadillac ever came out with. And that hood ornament in gold, the wreaths and crests, going back to that guy who Cadillac is named for, the guy who started Detroit or whatever. So I can't even remember his French name, but he was some kind of a scoundrel who apparently went after the daughters of noble people and, you know, sort of scammed his way to the top. You gotta love it. Anyway, look, I'm gonna pause it there for a minute. I'm gonna get all my crap in the trunk, and then we're gonna hop inside the one place where I actually really like being in this car and go for a spin. So bear with me one moment. All right, let's take this thing for a spin. Top, I just love it. There's that center brake light that, you know, came out in 1986, the third eye high-mounted brake light as a, you know, government federally mandated safety feature. So every new car had it, and then people raced out to the auto parts store to buy these generic bolt-on ones to make their older cars look current again. I mean, guys are probably still living in, you know, their own private islands based on quickly getting together a third brake light kit for cars. So that was a pretty big deal at the time. But anyway, you know, handsome piece. So here is what makes the springtime edition cool to me. The coolest part of it anyway are these the two-tone interior in white and blue. I mean, it is undeniably appealing. It's great. We got big garbage trucks driving around. You ever watch those people who drive behind garbage trucks on the road? I just think, man, what are they inhaling? You know, if I get behind a septic truck or a garbage truck, man, I'm in a panic to get around that thing. I don't even want to know what I'm taking in my lungs, you know? I try to hold my breath, but there's guys who just drive behind those things for miles. Anyway, the two-tone leather is just absolutely gorgeous, I think. Very nicely stuffed and padded. I like white as an interior. I've always thought that looks rich. I love the white surround on the, you know, the scuff plates and, you know, that sort of thing. I like the blue and white door panels. I think they look great. I'm going to just absolutely admit that I'm a sucker for the interior on this car. In the back seat, you're Canadians. How are you not going to be chipper back there, honestly? You know, you got plenty of legroom. You got an armrest. You got beautiful tufted looking padded leather with wreaths and crests embossed into it, and you got your own ashtrays, and yeah, just everything looks pretty good back there. Hop in this thing, see what we got. So there's your seat controls on this side, your power lock controls, your two manual mirrors, which is odd. Fire it up. It gives you a nice thud. I will say this, GM did a pretty good job of making this platform feel heavy for Cadillac. Yeah, I mean, there it is. So the 41 still fires up pretty. Let me pull forward, get out of the shadows and sun. And I don't like this daylight savings crap. It's barely see my house in the light anymore. Anyway, you could get different clusters in this. They had a digital one. This was the base analog one. You know, old school, horizontal speedometer. Over here you got your fuel data center, trip computer, gives you remaining range. You can do range, you can do instant, you can do average, great average. You can tell how much fuel you've used on this trip or tank. The information center, that's just warning lights. This could be the headlight control in a 72 Firebird, but there it is. It does have Twilight Sentinel, which is a great, early era GM option name, and basically that just turns your headlights on and off when it gets dark. Over here you got a tiny little climate control area, which I don't know how old guys ever figured out, but there it is. You got your cruise control on off switch, your right mirror control. A Symphony sound. They did have great radios in this era, I think. They were handsome with the cassette and the EQ, that sort of thing. Nice materials, really. I mean, the wheel is degraded somewhat, probably from the oil and the, retired New Jersey firefighter who drove it in his Palm. But, for one of these cars, it's actually in pretty good shape. It also tilts and telescopes, which is kind of neat. You got your wipers here. You got an ashtray down here. This one doesn't have it, but you see that little, I opened that thing down here, this thing, and it does have the CV plug. So 1987, you could still get a CB. Neat little leatherette tufted shit inside the dashboard. You got, see what I haven't even looked at this thing. So, came from Vernon, PA. Great. Yeah, nice set of books with it. The Cadillac Gold Key delivery system, very posh. Of course, Chrysler would later come out with the Crystal Key. The cup holders are shit. I don't think, you put a couple cans or a couple cups of coffee in there, they're going flying. I guess if you're having a picnic in your car, it's fine, but otherwise, what the hell is the point? Over there you got your passenger power seat control. They kept the middle Cadillac garbage can, which I like. It's got seating for 6. You got 3 seat belts front and back, which is nice. You got a little armrest here in white that you can use. Did we do the ashtray? Yeah, whatever. Up top you've got your, your cocaine mirrors illuminated, a little place to stick bags of drugs where the trooper probably won't find them. Back in the day, the cops would have known about this, but today, no way. You could have a big bag of crack in there, they'd never find it. Anyway, let's go for a spin. There you see the headlight, the light monitors on the tops of the fenders. Let me try to zoom in. They work pretty cool. You also, if you look in the rear view, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, there it is. You got light monitors there in the back, which is kind of neat. You got the wreaths and crests leading the way. It's got torque. A little bit. It's a V8, so it's got some. I don't think it'll light up the tires the way the 4.5s and 4.9s would, but you can tell it's a V8. It drives fine. I mean, it even drives like a Cadillac in the sense that, it feels a bit heavy, certainly heavier than a Chevy Celebrity would have felt. You get some V8 throttle. Oh God, I don't even like doing that. It's just, what's the point, Just cruise it. The thing's a boulevard cruiser, not a race car. It just sounds miserable when you hammer it, so I'm not going to even try. But otherwise it goes down the road fine. And they sold the sales figures were not really wounded. The prior generation, with 3 or 4 different variations, sold 1.5 million cars. This one sold a little over 1 million, but with fewer variations, and it was probably roughly about the same sales figures per model. In fact, the sedan Deville from this era probably outsold the prior one, but they sold a hell of a lot more coupes in the prior one. So here's that garbage can up there. Garbage truck. I'll watch out for these guys. But anyway, so look, as the engineers, they did their job enough. They were obviously tasked with making the thing feel like a Cadillac, which to a certain extent they did. And if the old guy even bothered to get past his horror enough to hop in the car and drive it, he probably wouldn't have been that disappointed. it did drive to some extent like a Cadillac, but I doubt it felt that much different from an Olds 98 either, you know? They probably could have just ended up with that. Got a big row of cars coming, so I'm gonna pause for a minute and not just talk shit. Wait till I'm driving again. Bear with me. Almost died with a Tesla. All right, so the early morning traffic around here is getting worse, which comes with the weather, but, you know, it's fine. I'll live with it if the weather is, you know, better, so. Anyway, so look, the thing goes down the road nice. It's smooth. It feels heavy enough. It's nice that it has the four-wheel independent. It soaks up bumps pretty good. They obviously put a lot of thinking into the cushy ride factor, which they would have had to. If Mr. Howell walked in a dealership, saw this tiny 3 feet shorter Cadillac than the one he was driving, and got in it and test drove it, and the thing drove like a celebrity, I mean, he'd never buy another Cadillac again. And in fact, a lot of people never even gave it that chance. They just went to Lincoln and Mercedes. You know, benefited everyone else. This was a very awkward time for GM, no doubt at all. I mean, I suppose to some extent they've gotten their shit together now, but man, by the late 80s, they were just flailing, absolutely flailing. So for now, look, the thing makes a nice collectible. I mean, it's unique in the sense that in modern times, it's a throwback to really past American glories. It doesn't look like anything else on the road. You know, if you look after it, if you drive it sparingly, keep it fresh, it's going to be pretty reliable. All the parts are out there and readily available, so they actually make pretty good collectibles now, and they're fun and easy in a way that some cars aren't. But you know, as far as being a luxury car of its era, I would have to say it was a swing and a miss, and that's why they had to change the model pretty radically over the next few years and eventually go into building stuff that looked a lot more like a European car, even if not, you know, as good. So anyway, I'm not going to keep you guys while I'm sitting here in crappy traffic behind winter residents having fun in their 430s. I'm just going to tough it out on my own. Really appreciate everyone having a look. This car is going to be at that Punta Gorda auction December 6th and 7th. The premier class, whatever the hell it is. I'll link to that in the description as well. And hopefully it can go on and find a nice new home. Some, you know, retired New Jersey firefighter who's gonna love it. Thank you very much for having a look. Appreciate it. We'll try and jam out a few more videos of these cars going to auction before they're gone, and keep the ball rolling. And again, get over to X, man. I'm telling you, I'm having a bit of fun over there. Would like to have a few more guys to interact with. So come on by. Thanks for having a look, and we'll see you with the next one.